Well, it's now about 5:20 in the morning, and I've been monitoring this eagle's nest that is in a tree at Big Bear Lake or Big Bear Valley near it. In the background here is the lake itself, and you can see some of the lights, I believe, off of the part of the community. This eagle's nest is the nest of two birds, bald eagles. One of them named, and that's probably them in the background. I don't know if that's being picked up by audio or not. Huh, cool. Probably going to come and land. So that's either Shadow, which is the male, or Jackie, which is the female. These bald eagles, they may come back to the nest. So, very cool. So they'll probably land in just a moment. Right here is what remains of two eggs. They laid two eggs several months ago. One egg began to hatch and was not viable, did not complete hatching. And then this other egg, which is just right at there's this bit of a stick, and right at the tip of that is, or should be, the remaining egg. Now, it's long past the time that it should have hatched. These birds religiously, with so much dedication, continued to, whatever it's called when a bird sits on an egg to wait for it to hatch, to help it hatch, to incubate the egg. These birds were rotating schedules through snow. At one point, I don't remember which bird it was, but at one point, the bird that was sitting on the egg was covered in snow, looked like an igloo. I didn't bother trying to document it. I'm sure there's thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people that are monitoring this, and I'm sure it's being documented in other ways. But I'm up earlier than, well, no, probably not earlier than normal, but in any event, had a little bit of time to take a look at the nest. And in the past, for the past couple of weeks now, long overdue on the viable hatching of this egg by the people that know a lot more about that. The birds continued, and I believe it was the male bird, I believe it was Shadow, continued to come and sit on this egg and take care of it, and grooming the nest. The nest condition as it is now is very basically messy, although the birds have continued to bring sticks and debris to continue building and fortifying the nest. It's just been a fascinating thing to be able to watch so closely, especially with the protected nature of bald eagles. And in any event, I'm kind of just rambling because, again, a little bit of decompression time here. The remaining egg, again, I believe that's just it. If you can just make out that white, of course, this is night vision right now on the camera. The camera will alternate between its night vision mode and full color, and obviously it has an automatic setting for that. So it's got a spectacular view from the nest. The camera itself is mounted in just a perfect, beautiful position, and the birds are at home with the camera there. We may see one of the eagles come in and land, although it's almost like they somewhat realized that the egg was no longer viable, because instead of staying with it on a rotational constant basis, the attendance of the nest and the attendance of the egg has gradually been dissipating over time. It's been gradually less and less, with less frequent visits and less lengthy periods of time of one of the eagles being there. And sometimes they'll be there at the same time. My understanding is this is still, in essence, their home or their nest. So, and they've apparently, if you want to call it, delivered at least one or two baby eaglets, I believe that's the right term, over the past couple of years. I believe that this year, 2021, this obviously was a completely non-viable season for them. And I believe that 2020 may have also been non-viable, but possibly in 2019 they had one or two eaglets, if I remember the history correctly. The nest is also visited, especially since it's been not really abandoned, but somewhat left unattended, let's say. From time to time, late at night, there may be a squirrel or mouse that will come and sniff around the nest. Now, so far, the egg, and that is if it's still there, and I'm pretty sure that it is, has been unmolested by any of the visitors, any of the little critters that have come to it. In the past, when the egg was being more well attended by the eagles, there have been an occasional intruder, either raven or I believe even another eagle may have come to visit the nest, and there have been something of what you might call an altercation between the attending eagles and the visitors, or the invaders, if you will. I'm curious. Of course, it is normally. I think the mammal visitors occur closer to midnight or 2 o'clock, and yeah, I've actually watched this from time to time at those hours. So I'm going to go ahead and just cut away, attend to some other necessary things here in the twilight, you might say. Looks like we've got I don't know if you can pick it up on the screen, but right about here, we've got a little bit of, I think you might be able to see the flashing light. And, of course, the lights of the community in the foreground are, looks like they're being picked up by the camera as well. And the camera faces to the east, so the sun will rise over that horizon. I think you can see the crest of the hill, make it out against the skyline. And I don't know, we'll just kind of come back to this. It's been a bit very unfortunate, a bit sad to see the remaining egg not be viable with an eaglet. There are several other remote cameras around the country with similar views of eagle nests, and some of those actually have eaglets in them, and it's very interesting to watch the parent eagles tend to their young and what they bring them. The eagles here at this nest will bring fish or other small game that they bring to the nest, even so far as if one of the eagles, I believe it was the female, is on the nest for an extended period of time, the male will actually bring food to her or her to him, and that bonded relationship is probably a thing that a lot of human beings could learn from Mother Nature. So we'll come back to this later. So here we are with a little more sunrise on the horizon, and I think is it just me, or it seems like the camera is just a little brighter on the tree trunk to the right, but we can kind of see that sunrise coming over the horizon. Let me pan up just a bit, and you get kind of an idea of the overall picture here. And I haven't heard I stepped away for a little bit, haven't heard the eagles, and believe me, that was the eagles that we heard at the beginning of this. Haven't heard them And I was sitting here for a little while before I started to record again, and have not seen any of the critters show up. I've seen a squirrel on one occasion, and I believe some type of a mouse on another occasion at nighttime. And the egg, I'm almost positive again that this is it right here. It may be also partially covered. What's happened is the eagles have, they were keeping the nest very well maintained, very neat, but they, over the last several days, it's become more messy or in disrepair, you might say. They're not tending to it or grooming the area like they were. Although they did continue to bring some materials. My understanding is normally if the female is on the nest at nighttime, the male eagle will usually roost very close nearby, kind of keeping an overwatch on the nest and his mate. The eagles are probably still, I guess their routine would be to roost instead of, why be in a nest if you don't have young to tend to or an egg to tend to. So it's not like they would be sleeping in the nest and probably just roosting nearby because it's their territory. Very territorial animals. I think you can see the lake surface a little better now. Nice and smooth surface there, giving them a lot of opportunity for game such as, fish or other game. So I'm gonna hopefully we might be able to pick up a visitor, and we'll see what happens here in a bit. Okay, coming back on with a little more remote recording of the remote camera. As you can hear, if you've ever been in the wild or near the wild, especially a lake, a lot of animals that reside in the area. And everybody is kind of waking up in the community, you might say. You can hear a lot of the other birds kind of saying good morning. Good morning, right? Yeah. Here we go. Yeah. Good morning, guys. Salute. A little soda water. So I was really hoping to see if it was one of those squirrel visitors or something else. And they may become a little more active right at the pre-dawn hours. Looks like there might be some movement just beyond the nest. Of course, that could also be the wind. The wind's not... Okay, I'm going to leave this running. I don't know if it's coming out on the screen, but right about here, there is some movement. And it looks like we've got... Oh, the camera just switched from its night vision mode to its color mode, its daytime mode. Kind of startled me there for a moment. I thought maybe something had popped off to the camera mounted in the tree. So it'll take a little while for the camera to adjust. Well, it won't adjust. The camera won't adjust, but for the light, the ambient light, to provide enough light to let us actually see. And I'm just going to go ahead and we'll just turn my camera off for a bit because not much is going to be observed. Well, here we go with a little more ambient light. You can tell that there are, I think it's possibly moisture or just smudges on the lens of the camera mounted in the tree. But that sunrise is just becoming right over the horizon there. Tilt that up just a bit, and you can see the little, it's not a pine cone, but the fact that it is a pine tree that this is mounted in. And Obviously, the animals in the area are just, waking up to their own version of reveille. Now, if I haven't already mentioned it, the camera apparently is hosted by friendsofbigbearvalley.org. If you have any spare change, I'm sure they would appreciate a donation to help maintain and facilitate this camera. I believe, again, that it's been in position for the last few years. And again, the sun is just climbing a little higher in the horizon there. Later in the morning, if I'm still able to be here, you'll get the idea of just how well placed this camera is, and the view that it provides. And I'm a bit surprised. I've been checking this intermittently all night, and there's not been an actual physical visit to the nest by either of the eagles. So, that said, it looks like they have completely abandoned the egg, and it's interesting that nothing's really. You would think that one of the visitors over the last couple of weeks, when there's been a visitor to the nest, that even something like a squirrel might access the egg and eat it. Of course, if there's something defective about the egg, then why would anything want to eat it? They'd probably avoid it. Just rambling thoughts early in the morning here. We'll come back a little bit later. Okay, and now Bingada. Sun peeking over the hilltop there, the horizon of the hilltop, the crest. And talk about some blinding light, right? So, in any event, I'm going to go ahead and just cut away, and I have a few things to take care of here. So, see you in a bit, hopefully. So now that I'm back, the sun is a little higher in the sky, and there's some traffic noise in the background. I just noticed that movement that I saw earlier that I thought it might have been a visitor is just right here, and it's just either part of a feather or a filament of something that's just kind of blowing in the breeze there. So my anticipation of a visitor from that position was not well founded, but this gives you a little bit better idea. And I don't see the egg at this point, so it could be because of the lighting, or the egg may be missing at this point. So I'm going to go ahead and cut away again, tend to some other business, and hopefully have a chance to take a look at this again a little bit later this morning. Now, I've been away for a bit and just walked by the screen a few times, and I've not noticed any real changes or any animals visiting, not even the eagles at this point. You can tell that the wind has kicked up just a bit. The wind is much noisier. I don't know, about 30 or 45 minutes ago, I could hear on the audio from the monitor that I believe it sounded like an aircraft flying overhead. However, I was correct. You can just make out the egg beyond this stem, or this part of a stick, and it's partially covered with grass and buried a bit. Normally, when it was being attended by the birds, it was completely uncovered, and they would nestle it into a better position from time to time. But the egg, or at least part of that egg, is still in the nest, and you can see how windy it gets up there. I've seen this view in the past where during higher wind, the tree limbs are really rocking back and forth, and I'm just kind of hoping to see if maybe one of the eagles might just do a touchdown to look around and maybe bring some more debris back. But I've not noticed the eagles back at the nest for hours and hours now at this point. And that in the background is not one of the eagles. That they have a higher pitched, like a shriek almost. So again, we'll cut back and maybe a little more later. Okay, I'm back, have a little more time. That is going to be a blackbird or a raven, if I remember the calls correctly, and it's very close. Could be hovering, probably check. It may be the same raven that had been aggressive with the eagles about a week or so ago. I don't know how territorial ravens are or blackbirds are, but that's definitely not one of the eagles. So let's just stand by here, and it sounds very close. Oh, well, I was just going to cut away, but that sounds very close. Yeah, it looks like there's still some moisture on the lens of their camera. Wow, that sounds extremely close. The eagles must not be anywhere near this nest at this point, because in the past they usually drive any intruder to the area away. Well, let's go. Nope. Again, I was just going to cut away, but it looks like we've got something right here. I don't know if it's on my screen or not. There's a bird right above this position. Let's see if we can adjust this a bit. There we go. And I don't hear the eagles at all. So they are completely absent from the area, or they just don't care. Maybe they have abandoned the nest, and perhaps the nest may end up being appropriated by that blackbird or raven. Interesting. Well, every time I get ready to cut away, there's more. Okay, here we go. This is a raven. Yep, that's definitely a raven. And Huh. Oh, I'm just going to go commentless right now. Yep, it's visible on my screen. Right here is the egg. You can see it much more definition. It's very strange. I'm sorry, I was not going to make a comment, but I wonder if the egg has completely become hard. It looked like... Wow. Part of the content is red. So, yeah, it was what would in effect be an embryo, a chick embryo. So, by my observation, it looks like the egg was completely intact until just now. And, well, that'll be interesting to see, you know, as I can't say it's tragic because the egg was not viable. It was not going to be a chick. It was not going to hatch into an eaglet. So I can't say it's tragic because of that. It's nature in its full force, in its normal, usual, and customary manner. And at least the raven got a bit of a meal there and helped, I guess, perhaps to put any final end to any hopes that the eagles may have had about the egg, although, quite frankly, it does look like they've given up hope. And probably better for them. So now the egg can become, can fully decompose at this point. And it doesn't look like the raven has any further interest. We haven't heard it nor seen it for almost a minute now. That was pretty amazing. Every time I was about ready to cut away, it got a little closer, and it's amazing that we were able to capture that. Now, friends of Big Bear, this camera feed gets refreshed, or I'm sure that they have some method of storing this, so this may be available in the future at their website. Frankly, I don't know if they have a separate website or not, but it was pretty amazing to have the opportunity to witness, especially so close. Prior to remote small cameras like this would not have been possible. So, this puts an end to the saga of the unhatched egg at Big Bear Valley. I'm reading that correctly now on their scroller here. And amazing. That's all I can say. It's just amazing. So I'll try to monitor this further as the morning presses on, and perhaps come back late tonight once the night vision is back on, and see if maybe some other animals visit the nest and what their interaction with the egg would be at that point. So, yeah, interesting. Okay, I just heard, okay, wow, there we go. That is the embryo, was just pulled from the egg. I thought that the raven had taken earlier. I heard some noise earlier and noticed that the raven had returned about a minute or two ago, and the raven has just removed the eagle embryo from the egg, and is now gone with it. And I don't know if that's the same. I have another aircraft going overhead. So obviously that was an aircraft overhead, and I don't know, I couldn't tell how developed the embryo was, but it looked pretty well developed. So it was not a completely non-viable egg, but it looked like it had ceased to be viable relatively early, maybe halfway through its cycle. Again, I don't know anything about eagles or birds and the process of embryonic eggs, but that was pretty, well, I'm glad I hadn't left yet. I was able to capture that as well. Again, this is a live camera hosted by friends of BigBearValley.org. If you can, if they have a donation at their website, by all means, throw them a few coins here and there to help them keep this camera operational. And they may even have some method of helping to protect the location. That was pretty amazing. I was wondering if anything would return to the nest, and sure enough, I heard something and walked back over to the monitor, and sure enough, the raven had returned, or a raven. I don't know if it's the same. Now it's about 8:20 p.m. at the nest. I had to take care of errands and a few other essential issues today, but this is another night shot, early evening shot of wow, we just had, I was just going to mention, now we have a visitor. This would be, yep, it's picked up on the screen. Now, if either Shadow or Jackie were present in the past, this little guy would have been a meal. Obviously a nocturnal animal based upon its position of eyes, and that's definitely either the same squirrel, if that is a squirrel, or an identical squirrel, the same species that has visited in the past. Once the nest has been somewhat abandoned by the eagles. We'll see if maybe the mouse, I don't know, I've never seen the mouse show up at the same time that the squirrel with the bushy tail has been present. But again, if the eagles were present, if this was occurring in the past, that little guy would probably be a meal right now. I was going, before our interruption here, I was going to mention that the camera has a remote control feature where it can pivot. It can be moved, from its, a pintle or not a tripod, but it seems to be mounted on an extension of a section of boards and up into the tree. But it does have a remote control feature where it can, I believe there's a telephoto feature where they can zoom in and out, and where they can also pivot the camera around to look at basically around the tree and down to the ground and up in the air a bit. Again, friendsofbigbearvalley.org is the host of this camera. And, we were very fortunate to have access to this. It's interesting that it kind of examined the egg there and didn't really seem to have any further interest. So, well, there he goes, or she goes, or it goes, or them, or they. Yeah, in any event, some very, very interesting and very fortunate timing today. So, with that said, you can go to their camera, and they have their website, and you can monitor this camera yourself live, as I have done now for intermittently on and off for the last, almost the last month, I would say. And again, there are a few other locations around the country that have similar camera setups. One in Florida that I can think of off the top of my head, and another, I believe, in another part of California, as well as several others. So, it's kind of interesting. Just seems to be chewing on some of the areas. They're not really foraging for food per se. So, there we go. And that's kind of an exit point for a lot of the animals. That's actually the area, that limb that extends off this way is kind of a perch point for the eagles in the past. And when they've had an intruder, that's where one of the intruders landed. And I think it might have been a blackbird or a raven in the past. And, wow, you can just watch this almost constantly as a background. So, again, there you go.